Zambia is a democratic country. This implies that the country is governed by a republican constitution which stipulates the systems of governance that equip the people to participate in choosing leaders of their choice. The constitution determines the tenure of office and distributes the powers of the state in 3 organs, which include the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive. Their roles are there to supplement each other and ensure that there is adherence to the existing laws and regulations. In fact, the Republican President Hakainde Hichilema has on several occasions assured that under his rule, the country would be governed by the rule of law.
We believe that democracy is a better system, a rule of law, respect for human rights, liberties, and freedom, private property, public property, respect for governance, good governance, that we must not steal from the people we serve. Corruption is unacceptable. Institutional strengthening, so that the day you don't have a good leader, the institutions will restrain them. Strong institutions, judicial, best institutions, oversight institutions, professional police, parliament, legislature, that can curtail the excesses of the so-called big men syndrome in Africa.
As a member of the international community, Zambia has committed to ensuring the preservation of human rights laws. At law, police are required to arrest suspects deemed necessary to help with investigations, and in doing so, those suspects enjoy the presumption of innocence until proven guilty by a competent court of law. But in the recent past, reports emerged of alleged torture happening to people while in detention. One man, identified as Rizwani Patel, a Petauke resident and a member of the opposition Patriotic Front, who was detained by police, took to social media to share his personal experience.
In the afternoon, they literally took me to C5 room at Central Police, beat me up like a criminal, put a shaft in between my legs, tied my hands with a seat belt. They beat me in such a way that right now my vision is blurring in and out. And they said, Katsuza Vomera, she's a Siranika Dionko Chabe. This is just a start. And for sure, they lived up to their words. At night, from there, they took me to Lilai police station, Lilai at division headquarters, Delta. I was there in the middle of the night. They came to pick me up with C5 officers. And then they took me in a bush. They covered my head with a hood. They put a gun to my head and told me that if you are not going to admit here, you are going to remain.
What do ordinary Zambians have to say about that?
I strongly feel that there is no torture happening in police cells in Zambia at the moment, because we are having complaints from like a same group. You find former government officials in the PF regime are the ones complaining about being tortured. Meanwhile, a lot of crimes are happening, and we have not witnessed anyone coming out to say, I was tortured, I was done this. I don't know. Could be it's happening, could be it's not. I would like to hear more complaints from others also who have been to police cells.
It may happen. Yes, in the cells inside there, without the police officers knowing what exactly is happening, because that torture, it is usually happens within themselves, like the culprits who are in the cells. Because most of the times you find that when you are caught and taken to police cells, you find there are people who have been there like for 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, or so forth. Sometimes back, I think it will be 3 or 4 years. I once visited some cells and so forth. Then someone explained how it goes at the time, just like, when you enter there, you find there are people who you found there, then you telling, as you have been here for so many, what and what, then they'll be telling you, how they live in the same cells. You find some they smoke, yes, some they smoke, so you find that maybe when you just get in, for you to avoid maybe being mistreated by those guys, maybe guys will buy
What?
Buy for a car, do what and what, don't do what. It's something that happens, but without the police concern.
Reports of brutality attracted the attention of the Law Association of Zambia. The association condemned the increased incidents of brutality attributed to the Zambia Police Service against persons believed to be members of the opposition political parties who, for one reason or another, have found themselves appearing before the police. LAZ President Lungisani Zulu explains.
The Law Association of Zambia is deeply concerned and strongly condemns increased incidents of brutality attributed to the Zambia Police Service against persons believed to be members of opposition political parties who, for one reason or another, have found themselves appearing before the police. We find this trend unfortunate and are concerned that the same has the potential of eroding democratic gains the country continues to make. We are aware that some of the reported incidents of police brutality include the arrest of Patriotic Front PF presidential hopeful Mr. Emmanuel Mwamba, PF members Rizwan Patel, as well as Given Piri, a co-accused person with former State House Special Assistant for Politics, Dr. Christopher Zumani Zimba. While we had hoped the police command would nip the worrying trend of police brutality in the bud, we are saddened by the stance taken by the Inspector General of Police, who is reported as urging the opposition to tone down and cooperate with his officers, or else the police will use minimum force. Such a stance from the police command does little to redress the problem of police brutality by the officers, and in any event is not in consonance with modern trend of professional policing of citizens. There is no law which gives the police service power to brutalize citizens in the name of minimum force during arrests. It is also not the function of the police to control the toning down of citizens who have the right to freely express their views in line with their constitutionally protected freedoms.
The position of the Law Association of Zambia attracted the attention of the Home Affairs and Internal Security Minister, Jack Mwimbo, who took the matter to Parliament. Delivering his ministerial statement on reports of police brutality, Mr. Mwimbo presented these views.
The House may wish to note that under Section 26 of the Criminal Procedure Code, Chapter 88 of the laws of Zambia, the police officers are empowered, I repeat, are empowered to make arrests without a warrant in specific situations such as when a person commits an offense in the presence of a police officer, or when the officer has reasonable ground to believe that an offense has been committed. Section 18, subsection 2 of the Criminal Procedure Code, Chapter 88 of the laws of Zambia, states, and I quote, if such person forcibly resists the endeavor to arrest him or attempts to evade the arrest, such police officer may use all means reasonably necessary to effect the arrest. Further, Section 26J of the Criminal Procedure Code, Chapter 88 of the laws of Zambia, states that a police officer can arrest any person for whom he has reasonable cause to believe that a warrant of arrest has been issued. Madam Speaker, let me take this opportunity to make it clear, pertaining to a perception by sections of society on the Zambia police call-out. The call-out is not in any way, by law, a requirement for any police officer to effect an arrest.
Now, Article 1 of the Convention Against Torture and Other Cruel, Inhuman, or Degrading Treatment or Punishment defines torture as any act by which severe pain or suffering, whether physical or mental, is intentionally inflicted on a person for such purposes as obtaining from him or a third person information or a confession pushing him for an act he or a third person has committed or is suspected of having committed, or intimidating or coercing him or a third person, or for any reason based on discrimination of any kind, when such pain or suffering is inflicted by or at the instigation of or with the consent or acquiescence of a public official or other person acting in an official capacity. It does not include pain or suffering arising only from inherent in or incidental to lawful sanctions. What does the Zambian law have to say about that? Mr. Lungisani Zulu explains.
Article 15 of the Republican Constitution is very clear when it provides that no person shall be subjected to torture or to inhuman or degrading punishment or other like treatment. To that end, we call on the police command to change its stance and take immediate remedial action to redress this worrying and growing trend of police brutality.
What can Zambia do to clear the air over this issue? The Human Rights Commission spokesperson, Mwelwa Muleya.
At the moment, even if acts of torture are criminalized under Article 15 of the Constitution of Zambia, there is no enabling law that defines torture and prescribes penalties for perpetrators of torture. As a result, there is no one who can be convicted of having committed acts of torture in Zambia, because the courts of law can only sentence anyone or someone for an offense that is defined and its penalties prescribed in writing, which is not the case with acts of torture. As a result, perpetrators of torture are only charged with assault-related, offenses, which are far below the highest threshold of torture, which is a grave offense and grave affront to the human dignity. And Zambia is a signatory to the UN Convention Against Torture, but so far she has failed to domesticate the UN Convention Against Torture after ratifying it in 1998. We believe that by enacting an anti-torture law, it will help to effectively combat crimes of torture and ensure that everyone is adequately protected against torture, regardless of their status in society.
What is the voice of the church on the matter? Bishop Chilala Chongwa is the regional bishop for Copperbelt Grace Ministries Mission International and the senior pastor for Miracle Center in Chililabombwe. He shares his sentiments.
It's important to remember and to be reminded that all of us are potential suspects. And how would we want to be treated? So the law enforcers are not an exemption. So the very way they would want to be handled and treated when they find themselves on the other side of the law, which is very possible for every one of us, that is how they should be able to also enforce the law on others. Today it can be somebody else, tomorrow it is you. So we must do unto others as we would want them to do unto us within the confinement of the law. Human life is precious. Human life is in the hands of God. We can go as far as we can in doing our duty, but not taking things in our own hands, because at the end of it all, we shall still be accountable to our Creator and also to the law of the land. So every one of us, especially the law enforcers, take precaution so that you don't overstep your boundaries out of zeal and sometimes out of frustration. Be professional and improve on your skills to meet the time we are living in.
And what is government's position regarding its commitment to observing law and order? Home Affairs Minister Jack Mwimbo.
The new Dawn administration, under the leadership of His Excellency Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, President of Zambia, is working tirelessly to restore law and order in the country. Government remains committed to upholding the principles of democracy, human rights, and the rule of law.
It is important to underscore that the word democracy comes from the Greek words demos, meaning people, and kratos, meaning power. This in itself tells you that a healthy democracy needs people on the one hand and on the other, those chosen to administer power on their behalf. A key component is the legal requirement for those enforcing the law to exercise these freedoms to an extent only allowed at law, and for those found wanting at law to cooperate with law enforcers in order to achieve one common objective. One only hopes that both inmates behind bars and officers mandated to enforce the law abide by the law at every turn to avoid unnecessary situations. For Radio Christian Voice News, I'm Bibiana Lambert.